Machine is open. All the members voted. Tyler roll call shows 69 members present. Chair declares quorum for conducting business. House motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when we do adjourn, we adjourn until December 12th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Representative Lehman.
Heard the motion in a second. You heard the motion in a second. Roll call is requested and will be granted. When the machine is open, all those in favor will indicate by voting aye. Those opposed, no. Show the chair is voting aye. Have all the members voted? Tyler roll call shows 66 ayes, 27 noes. The motion has been adopted. Chair announces the reassignment of House Bill 1019 from the Committee on Judiciary to Committee on Courts and Criminal Code. Chair hands down Bill List 3.
Bill List 3, House Bill 1048, a bill for an act to amend the Indiana Code concerning local government. Representative Nope.
You've heard the bills on Bill List 3 are considered read for the first time and sent to committee. Representative Johnson, do you have a motion?
Mr. Speaker, I move that consideration of House Bill 1032 in the matter of midday code.
For the motion in a second, the chair recognizes Representative Johnson to speak on the bill. Or excuse me, the motion.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, over the last several days, this chamber has been given a very clear picture of what HB 1032 is and what it's not. It's not transparent. It was advanced with short notice, without public hearings around the state, no real meaningful opportunity for Hoosiers to weigh in, and no clarity about how these districts were drawn or who was listened to or ignored in the process. It's not responsible. We have counties across Indiana telling us they don't have the funding, staff, or systems to implement these changes in the time frame we're imposing. We've offered amendment after amendment to try to help them, and every single one was rejected. It's not equitable. There's been no genuine analysis of impacts on minority communities, no discussion of Voting Rights Act compliance, and no willingness to engage on the harm this map may cause to communities whose representation has already been strained. And it's not good governance. Fast-tracking a mid-decade redistricting bill with this level of uncertainty and this level of public distrust is the opposite of the way this institution is supposed to operate. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm offering a motion to postpone this bill indefinitely, not to be dramatic, but to be honest about this moment. Everything we've seen over the last several days has shown exactly why we should stop this process right here. If the majority believes this bill is sound, defensible, and worthy of becoming the law of Indiana, then I suspect you'll vote against my motion. But if you're among those who recognize that this is rushed, opaque, underfunded, and unexamined, that it's not worthy of the people we serve, then this motion gives you an off-ramp. Consider it my early Christmas gift to all of you. An opportunity to pause, to step back, and choose a better path than the one we're on. Let's pass this motion. Thank you.
Roll call is under question. Second will be Graham. Representative Zimmerman, speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Although I do appreciate Representative Johnson's offer for an early Christmas present, this motion to postpone indefinitely is not how we do business in this House. We have treated this bill as we do every other bill. It's had 3 separate readings on 3 days. Let the bill work its way through the process. I'd appreciate your defeating the motion.
Further discussion? Chair sees none. I guess we're going to recess for a minute while we prepare the machine to do the roll call. Requested and seconded on the motion will be granted. Oh, I guess I should bring us back to order. Chair calls the House back to order. Roll call has been requested and seconded. When the machine is open, all those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Show the chair is voting no. Oh. Representative Hatcher, would you like to vote? Have all the members voted? Tyler, roll. Roll call says 28 ayes, 65 noes. The motion to postpone indefinitely has been defeated. Chair hands down on third reading House Bill 1032.
House Bill 1032, a bill for an act to amend the Indiana Code concerning elections.
Chair recognizes Representative Small to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, presenting to you House Bill 1032. I'm going to go through this. There's only 12 sections. It's not a very complicated bill. We've all had it. But I just wanted to, for the record, read in some of the sections and what they do in short summary, after which I'm happy to stand to questions about whatever piece you may be interested in learning more about. Section 1 allows and clarifies redistricting at a time other than the first regular session following the U.S. decennial census. Section 2 was some dates that were put in code for COVID, so we're just removing those out. Section 3 defines the pathway that this bill will take should it get challenged, and the pathway leads it to the Indiana Supreme Court. Section 4 and 5 are both date changes that are required for the new maps, how we're doing the maps for the future. We made those changes. Section 6 expires the old maps at the election in November so that the new maps can take its place. Section 7 is the longest section, and I won't go into each individual congressional district other than to say they're divided by counties, townships, precincts, and census blocks. That's best translated into the maps that were provided earlier in the week. Section 9 and 10 are just conforming amendments. Everybody's familiar with that. Section 11 states that the election division is to assist counties with implementation, and 12 allows for incumbents who are in congressional districts now to remain in those seats until the election next November. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions, and I'd appreciate your support on House Bill 1032.
For discussion on the bill, Representative Pierce, speak on the bill. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. You know, for 4 months now, I've been thinking to myself, if we got to this point, what would be the most effective things that I could say that might convince you to rethink your current pathway? And you know, it's been a mix of emotions along the way. In the beginning, a lot of anger. Because what this proposed map and this idea that's been talked about since August is you really do want to erase the Democratic Party when it comes to Congress. An institution that I once worked for a Democrat. And that really, I kind of thought, how do we get here? How do we get to the point where it becomes even defensible to say that 7 out of 9 is not enough? We have to have 9 out of 9. And it's really a sad day. This is a sad day for our institution, for the House. And I don't say this with sarcasm. I don't know what's happened to my friends on this side of the aisle. We've had many profound policy debates here. We've disagreed. We've had robust debate. But at the end of the day, I consider many of you my friends. I enjoyed learning about your families, things going in your life, your perspectives, things happening in your communities. And you know, it's really a sad day when it's right at the point where it's saying, like, I like a few Republicans as friends, probably be an attack ad against me in the primary. This guy likes some Republicans. We can't have him up there. And yet, my friends on this side of the aisle, all of this stuff happening is so far out of the norm, it's hard for me to get even my mind around it. So first, to have a president say, wow, I'm going to have a rough midterm, so I better go out and start asking states to redraw their maps in the middle of the decade, something not normally done, so that I can maintain control of Congress. Basically saying, I need to cheat to win. And the first thing I would have thought, the first thing that came to mind, it's like, wow, this is the party of Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Reagan. Could you imagine any of those presidents saying, I'm going to have a rough election coming up. I need to cheat. I need to rig up the system. Could you literally imagine any of them saying that? So my first thought was, okay, people are going to kind of just laugh that out as some kind of fever dream, tweet or something. But then we started to get governors on board. Right? So then you have to ask yourself, would Doc Bowen have said, sure, come on down, let's have a new map in the middle of the decade? Bob Orr? Mitch Daniels doesn't think it's a good idea. But now we have a governor from this side of the aisle who's not only saying it's okay, he's actively threatening own members of his party to get this bill passed. What is going on? So we get a failure at the top in DC, we get a failure downstairs on the second floor, and now the saddest part of all is it's failing right here in our own House chamber. I've never seen anything like it. I've been around here a long time. Some people probably think too long. As a member and as a staffer, I've seen a lot of battles, a lot of fights. I've seen, days when we weren't around for a long time, right? We've had lots of disagreements. But I've never once got the sense from the other side of the aisle that basically you really shouldn't exist. We got to have 9-0. It's too dangerous to have even 2 Democrats in Congress. And it's not even smart for our people. I worked out in Congress, and those majorities change from time to time out there, and you have influence within both of your caucuses. And, I'll never forget one of the first months I was there was some bill we're working on. It's like, oh, I got to call over to the Senate side where the Dick Lugar, he's a Republican. I wonder if they'll help me. I wonder if they'll help my member of Congress get his bill done. And I called over there. Nobody mentioned what party I was from. We talked about the issue. We worked together on the issue, and we got it done. And nobody said, you're horrible for working for the other side. You're almost rewarded for it. So if we go to this 9-0 map, and maybe the House changes, now you have the state of Indiana has no one within potentially the majority party to talk about things like appropriations, to work together on getting specific things done for the state. You lose that. Now, if you achieve your goal and the Republicans maintain control of Congress, which, by the way, it's like by 2 or 3 votes, maybe you'll be able to just get things done for Indiana, but I think you're much better off having some representation from each party if you really want to be smart about it, so it doesn't make sense for our people. And so all along the line, and believe me, this pains me to say this, it's only our friends in the Senate, some of our friends in the Senate who stood up and said, I don't think so. Not a good idea. Maybe not even a Hoosier value. Everybody else is like, we got to do it. Why do we have to do it? We know it doesn't really make sense. And so the sad thing then is, which I think kind of lowers the esteem of this institution, House of Representatives, is we have to start violating norms right and left to make this happen, to get this bill passed. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to redraw the maps in the middle of the decade, right? So in order to do that, we have a statute that clearly says you do that in the year after the census, so the bill has to amend that statute and create an exception. So you do that. So we're violating the accepted norms of how this works. You redraw after the year of census because you have fresh population data. You have to account for shifts. You may have been apportioned less or more members of Congress at that time. There's a reason why you have to do it then. It doesn't have to be done now. We had the kind of glide over a House rule or two to even get into session. And other norms that led us to these maps is, when we did this in 21, we had a series of hearings, one hearing in every congressional district. People could come in and talk about what they would like to see in the maps, how they would like them to be drawn, about their communities of interest, where they thought they belonged and where they didn't, for directions that you could draw the maps. And I don't know how much of those public hearings actually ended up in the final map, but at least we tried. At least we told them we were willing to hear what they had to say. And we got this map on Monday morning, had a hearing on it less than 24 hours later. No time for the public to really absorb it and to understand it and to be able to communicate to us what they think about it. And the maps themselves, if you look at it, it goes against some of the most basic principles of map drawing. First of all, the districts are clearly not compact. And I know in 2021, I heard a lot about from that. People, your supporters of the 2021 map were very proud of the compactness of the districts. And I would hear endlessly about the horrible map of 2001, which did have a district that went from West Lafayette down to Paoli, not very defensible. So they said, hey, we don't have these districts, meandering all over the state, just trying to pick up voters from one political part or the other, but not compact here. We're certainly ignoring communities of interest, and nowhere is that more evident than in Marion County, where we're dividing that county up 4 different ways and attaching people in the center of Indianapolis to people along the Ohio River at various points. Those aren't the same communities of interest. Imagine having to be a member of Congress and when considering issues, having to represent communities in the middle of Indianapolis and communities in the rural areas down along the river. That's a really hard thing to do. That's why we think about communities of interest, because you want your representatives to be able to represent your interests and not to be constantly being pulled different directions. And most importantly, it dilutes the minority voting power. Right? You're reducing the voices of many people in Indianapolis. And if this map goes to JP, you're probably going to take away the only African Americans serving in Congress from Indiana and probably reduce overall minority representation in Congress. Important voice is not going to be heard anymore. Maybe a voice you disagree with, maybe you don't like the policies proposed by a person, but he's representing his community and he's got a pretty good community of interest, pretty solid, significant one. And so all of that is thrown aside when you look at these 2 maps together. And so the sad thing is we don't have apparently enough people. Maybe we'll have barely enough across the hall. We hope so. But there are not enough people standing up and saying, this isn't right. We shouldn't do it. It goes against our values. It reduces the esteem of this very institution. An institution, by the way, which we're all just passing through. Some will be here longer than others. Its members served as long as 50 years. But at the end of the day, we're just passing through. And it kind of reminds me of that old Boy Scout motto they used to tell me back in my Eagle Scout days is leave the place better than you found it. We are not leaving the House of Representatives a better place than we found it with a bill like this, with a process like this, with the ends justify the means approach. It's why we should defeat this bill. Now, the other thing that kind of makes me sad is, we often hear from people, they're not very happy with their government, they're frustrated with their government, they're complaining about it. And I often tell people, your government is not some inanimate object. It is not some blob out there somewhere. Your government is full of people. And in many cases, people you directly elect. And then those people directly elected choose people to help them to implement their policies. You can have an impact by choosing the people who populate your government. You can change the direction of your government if you become involved in the democratic process, if you don't just say, oh, politics, that's kind of a dirty thing. Who wants to get involved with that? If you get involved in your democracy, it can work for you. What do I tell those people when I say your government wants to erase you? They want it to be 9-0. 7-9 is not enough. It's going to undermine people's really their belief in our government. And that's the worst thing of all. Because this action today, and if this map actually becomes law, I think there's a danger that events can kind of spiral out of control. I kind of feel like they're already out of control now. I mean, I can tell people are not happy to be here. I can tell a lot of you wish this wasn't happening. And yet we're somehow stuck in this Twilight Zone world where we have to do things we don't really want to do because somebody out in Washington is demanding it. We can't stand up and just say, this is Indiana. We're Hoosiers. We do things differently here. We believe in Hoosier values. We believe in fairness. We believe in even competition. We believe in a level playing field. We don't believe in putting our thumb on the scale to give ourselves an unfair advantage. And in the process, really disenfranchise 40 to 45% of the people in Indiana who tend to vote for Democrats. They'll have no one they can point to out in Congress. All the time I hear that from people. It's like, well, at least we have Andre Carson or Congressman Ravan, at least out there to say, our views, speak on our behalf, and they wish they had their own member of Congress, but they kind of accepted that, until they got the votes, that's the way it was. And now we're just telling them, don't even try because we'll just keep adjusting it. So what's going to happen? Imagine if this map passes and becomes law. And we have the midterm elections. And right now, I think there's like a 3 or 4 vote difference between the majorities in Congress. Let's imagine that the Republican Party ends up with a 2-vote majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. And imagine that the political scientists do the analysis and they say, yeah, you know what? The Democrats would be in control of the U.S. House right now, except a handful of states like Indiana passed this map. And that gave them 2 seats they would not otherwise have had. Now imagine for a minute that the shoe were on the other foot. And you looked out and all indications are that your party would control the U.S. House, but because the other party manipulated the maps in a bunch of states, now I'm not in control. What is that going to do to the legitimacy of Congress? You're going to have at least half the country thinking, why do I even listen to those guys? Why should I obey their laws? They're not there legitimately. They got there through this kind of help. They cared about their power more than they cared about the values of democracy. And now I am completely shut out. That's when things get dangerous. When people feel that their government will not respond to them, will ignore them, will not redress their grievances. When that happens, we are in for a rough ride. And we have a chance to avoid that here today. We have a chance to restore people's faith in government, to restore the faith in us, their elected officials. All we need is 51 people out of 100 to stand up and say, you know, I like my party. I hope my party wins. I'm going to fight like crazy for the policies and the values that I think my party embodies. But you know what? I'm going to fight fair. I'm going to fight on a level playing field. I'm going to win the right way, or I'm willing to lose. But I'm going to fight fair. All we need is 51 out of 100. And this whole thing stops right now. And we can say to America, if not the world, in Indiana, things are different. We are Hoosiers. We believe in fairness. We don't believe the ends justify the means. We believe that we should do things the right way. And so I would urge you, with all of my heart, for the sake of this institution, let's turn this from a day of sadness to a day of joy for our democracy.
First discussion on the bill. Representative Jackson. You either yield, he yields.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Smalls. Forgot to mention your new hairdo. It looks nice.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There's a short list of people that like it.
Okay. Could this act of action as far as this redistricting establish a precedent for redistricting in the future?
Would it establish a precedent for redistricting in the future? I would say yes. I would say that we're making it clear that you can redistrict outside the decennial census.
So could frequently redistricting undermine public's trust? And if so, how is that concern going to be addressed?
Well, I think we have to follow the rules of the House. We have to follow Indiana law. We have to obey the Constitution and hope that the public trust sees that we're following the rules, we're obeying the Constitution and obeying the law.
Do you think that the public feels we are obeying the law in what we're doing now?
I don't know that I can speak for the public, but I can tell you we're doing our very best to follow our rules and follow our laws and obey the Constitution, not only of Indiana, follow the Constitution of the United States and pay close attention to precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States.
You were present in committee hearing. We had upwards of 40 people who came and testified. And of those 40 people who came and testified against the bill, I think there were only 2 who testified in opposition, who testified for the bill. Also, in the last few days, we've had hundreds of people here opposing the bill. And on the one day that people came to support it, I think it was about 15 or 20 people that showed up. Is that not enough to let you know what their feelings are, along with the hundreds and thousands of phone calls and the thousands of petitions?
I think there were 43 people that testified. I took very good notes. I listened to what they had to say. I weighed what they had to say. I weighed what I'd heard elsewhere not in a committee hearing from constituents and made the best decision that I could.
Thank you. You stated in committee that you've been working on this bill for 4 months. As I look here on the screen here, I only see your name as the author. Was there someone else that worked with you here in the State House on this bill, like a co-authors?
Yeah, I think Representative Zimmerman is a co-author. I'm not sure why it's not up on the screen yet, but he'll be a co-author to this bill.
Thank you. You also spoke about political performances many times. Could that be what you meant when you mentioned to us how you plan to introduce legislation in the upcoming session that's gonna all of a sudden miraculously help those individuals who are currently suffering now with utility bills, with health bills, and with child care?
I think what I said, and I said it in committee, was that I was working on childcare legislation. I continue to do that. I said, I think that some of the issues that are important to Hoosiers are exactly what you just said. And I'm looking forward to this body doing what it does, come together and try and find solutions that help Hoosiers every day.
Permission to speak.
You're recognized, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Political performance seems to be the topic of why this bill is here. But in reality, political performance is something that's short-lived. It's something to get that wow effect. It's something to make the public think that what you're doing is good, it's for good government. But as I stand here and I look on both sides of the room, I don't see not one person with a smile on their face. And I haven't seen it since I've been here since Monday. Okay? I know the people in this chamber. I've worked with you all in committee here on different issues and been out to dinner and other places with you all. You clearly don't want to be here. Okay? And I get it. This is the time that normally you're preparing for the biggest holiday of the season, to be home with your families, preparing for your children who are coming home for the holidays and your grandchildren. I get it. I can't tell you how many of you all have said to me, I can't wait to get out of here. I don't want to be here. I can think of other places for me to be. Well, you know, I hear you. But you know what? You have an opportunity to make this right. You have an opportunity to go back home and to tell your family, your constituents, that you did the right thing. Because you know this is not the right thing. You know this is going to do nothing but tear our state apart. You know it. But you know what? It takes a hell of a person to stand up and take responsibility and do the right thing. That is something that you're going to have to deal with between you and whoever your maker is. I cannot guilt you into doing it. That's something you have to do on your own. Everybody's upbringing, I'm sure, was not the same as mine. I was taught to stand up, to speak up, and do the right thing, regardless of what my neighbor, my friend, or another relative of mine said. If it was right, then fine, go along with it. But if it's not, then don't. You see, as we have presented this bill, we've talked about it, and I'm sure you all have talked, my colleagues on the other side. I'm sure you all have talked about it amongst yourselves. But what's troubling to me is not one of you have brought yourself up here to this podium and spoke about it and said, oh, I think it's a wonderful thing here. Not one of you. You may have said it at home, in your closet, in your basement, in the back room where only you heard it, but you have not said it here. You have not said it to your neighbors. You've not said it to any of us. You just come in here and you look solemn like you lost your best friend. Well, you can make a change. You can make that difference. Later on today, you can vote to end it. It does not have to go any further. And I humbly ask you, just do the right thing. Thank you.
First question on the bill, Representative Arrington to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I've been a member of the General Assembly since 2006, 17 years. And from the very first year, and I probably every year since, I have been told, vote your district. If you don't, you better have a really good reason. And you all have probably heard the very same thing. So I do listen to my district, and they're telling me loud and clear, vote no on this new map. In fact, maybe it's because I'm on the Elections Committee, I'm hearing from voters all over the state, and they're saying the same thing. My email, my calls, it's all overwhelmingly, I'd say 99.9% is saying vote no on these maps. And it's no wonder they're saying that, because they're getting a message that voters don't matter when they look at this map. They're getting the message that legislators are going to choose their voters, not the other way around. And when you look at that map, look at 21 and the one that's proposed. What a huge difference in the way they look. I can't imagine that any Hoosier would have drawn this new map. And in fact, the author told us it was drawn by some group called I think it was the National Redistricting, or Republican Redistricting Trust, which I've never heard of that before. I wonder how many other people here have heard of that before. These strangers designed this map. Now, look at the 2021, and my district is 5. It's that burgundy, very compact district. Now, my district, well, my county is divided into 2 different congressional districts. Most of the county, or at least most of Muncie, and a good bit of the county is in I guess you call it the pink district, the salmon district 3, where it goes all the way north up to the Michigan line. The rest of Muncie and the rest of Delaware County goes south all the way to the river. And people, once they saw the map, which was revealed on Monday, my mail started escalating on complaints about this map. And I want to read to you what one of my constituents from Muncie said, because I think it's the essence of what's wrong with this map. The subject line said, Muncie will succumb to Fort Wayne. And she said, if you vote for redistricting, you obviously do not care what happens to East Central Indiana, which is a depressed area and will only get worse with the redistricting map that has been proposed. Muncie will be reduced further in stature as Fort Wayne will be the center of our district and the beneficiary of future federal funds. I am sure that the representative for Muncie's district will be from Northeast Indiana. And this person will know nothing about Muncie or care to know. Please vote no on redistricting. And that's exactly what I plan to do. I'd also like to talk about the intensity of feeling, not just from that constituent, from others. I stayed at the Columbia Club last night, and I went down to dinner. I sat by myself at a table close to the bar. There was a whole table full of Republicans over in the corner. And of course, the Columbia Club is a bastion of liberalism. But while I was waiting for my dinner to arrive, I was talking about this bill and what I felt about it. And when I hung up, a man who was a perfect stranger came up to me and he said, "I agree with you, and I want to make a contribution to your campaign." I hope that every one of you will be thinking about 2026 when you make this vote, because voters, they're angry, they're afraid, and they don't like it, and they want it to be voted down. And I hope that's what you will do. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Burton, you're recognized to speak on the bill.
Thanks so much, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I won't stand before you long, but I want to go on record in strong opposition for this mid-cycle redistricting attempt. I feel compelled to speak for thousands of Evansville residents who are not most concerned about congressional maps, but are concerned about the pass-through electricity bill and medical bill, medicine, and how they can provide their loved ones with presents for Christmas. My inboxes are filled with real-life examples of how current policies are not meeting the needs of people. Families are thinking about how to get through each day, each week, and each month. Far too many Hoosiers are overworked, underpaid, and constantly revising their budgets to afford housing, utilities, medical care, child care, and other basic necessities. While we're here debating an abnormal policy proposal, it's payday for a lot of Hoosiers. And by Sunday, most of those paychecks will be spent, not on frivolous things, but the very basic things needed. So far, the central focus of this legislature is a misaligned, chaotic attempt to redraw Indiana's congressional districts, leaving congressional districts, leaving critical issues on the sideline. This convening today is not about the needs of Hoosiers. It's about a short-sighted political power grab. In my neck of the woods, more than 16,000 customers are behind on their electric bill, almost owing $5 million. That averages out to about $312.50 in the rear. Children in Southwest Indiana are going to sleep hungry and waking up cold because costs are too burdensome. That affects their physical well-being, their mental health, and their ability to perform. And this is only part of a larger reality. Families cannot afford or access safe, quality, and affordable housing. While some of you may have purchased your home in your 20s, that's out of reach for many of my peers. And reports tell us that the average age of first-time home buyers in 2025 are now older than 38. Today, I'm speaking for Mrs. Carter, a grandmother in my district who took in both her granddaughter and her great-granddaughter. She did this because the combination of rent, daycare, utilities, transportation, insurance, and groceries are simply impossible to manage alone, even while working full-time as a CNA with aspirations of being a nurse. Families like the Carters are everywhere across the state of Indiana. They want action, relief, and fair policies that make the American dream possible again. As Indiana follows the direction of outside political forces, other states are actually expanding support for children and families. New Mexico offers free childcare. Kentucky provides universal pre-K. Maine guarantees free meals for students in school. Meanwhile, Indiana has closed childcare vouchers until 2027. Our choices make our priorities clear. These choices will lead to more children entering kindergarten unprepared, struggling with eye read, and falling behind before they ever had their fair shot. And we all know what third grade reading scores predict future prison populations. If we continue to go down this path, Indiana will build another billion-dollar prison, increase Medicaid dependency, and starve local economies from resources they desperately need. Last week, the Evansville-Vandenberg School Corporation canceled a promising new program, the Innovation Center for Science and Health, in partnership with area colleges. It was canceled because of Senate Enrolled Act 1. This program would have given students a greater access to pathways into healthcare careers. Legislation passed in this chamber forced them to abandon the project. So while the state claims to champion apprenticeships and innovative work-based learning opportunities, our own policies are blocking Hoosier students from hands-on learning. We are denying young Hoosiers the chance to fill the very jobs we desperately need. The agenda set by Washington, D.C. seems to outweigh the needs of the people here at home. Our current maps were once praised by the people now trying to upend them. But a shift towards a 9-0 map means that we risk the impossible scenario for 9 people to balance the agricultural, manufacturing, transportation, and economic development needs within each congressional district. Redrawing the congressional maps happens after the census, every 10 years. This mid-decade rewrite is being pushed by the same voices who once told people to drink bleach to cure COVID, who encouraged harm against Hoosier legislators, and once referred to 2 Corinthians as 2 Corinthians. We're experiencing an unorthodox attempt to muscle political influence just a couple of weeks out before Christmas. Instead of addressing these very real problems facing Indiana, we're discussing the reworking and redrawing of congressional maps that were once just drawn. While thousands of families go without adequate heat, childcare, food, medicine, and stable housing, this chamber is prioritizing unnecessary and abnormal redistricting attempts that could set a damaging precedent for our future. Hoosiers are watching, many of whom have never really paid attention to politics. They are frustrated and they want action on the real issues. But this chamber is choosing to ignore families, employees, parishioners, classmates, and neighbors for the sake of this blatant power grab. People will remember who put politics over them. These maps punish economic interests of our state by diluting the voices of the very people who drive our economy. To legislators listening, I urge you to listen to your conscience. This is a defining moment. Your vote today will be remembered, and it's not too late to do the responsible thing. I can only imagine the pressure some of you are under, but if no one takes a stand today, then what's next? By supporting redistricting today, what will you have blind allegiance to tomorrow? And as I take my seat, again, I just urge everyone in this body to vote no.
Further discussion, Representative Shackelford to speak on the bill. The author yields.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I just have a couple of questions that I just want to dig into, especially when it comes to the data that was used for this.
Okay.
So one, you had mentioned in committee, the Republicans used a third party to obtain the data for the maps. Which company was that, and was it a nonpartisan company?
The organization was the National Republican Redistricting Trust.
Okay, so then I'm assuming it was not nonpartisan.
I think that would be a correct assumption.
Okay, and then I'm interested to know, how did they configure the political, population, and demographic data? Did they use the 2020 census data as a foundation?
Yeah, I think you have to use the 2020 census data, but you also would need to use the past 3 presidential elections, the past 2 federal senatorial elections, and then you would backstop that by checking the Indiana Secretary of State and the Indiana Attorney General's races for the last 2 cycles.
So they use all past data, nothing current?
What I just laid out is what they used.
Okay, so what you just said is they use all old past data, no current data.
Well, there's no current elections. It's something in the future. So you have to look at elections that have happened.
Okay, interesting. And so I'm assuming the vendor recommended multiple options or map variations. Did you receive more than one option? And if so, why did you choose this option?
I did not. I received this one.
Okay, so you hired, or someone hired a contractor. And usually when you hire a vendor, they give you multiple options. So you're saying that they only sent you one map option.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. And then I'm curious, when the vendor sent you the final report, did the report contain any racial demographic data?
The maps were based purely on political performance.
So I know the maps were, but when you got that report from the vendor, did they give you any demographic data with their report?
The only thing that I saw was purely based on political performance.
So I got that part. But when you received that email, I'm assuming it came by email because this is a national group, or did they mail it to you?
No, I got it handed to me on paper.
Okay, so they handed it to you in person.
The trust did not. Staff here did. So
Okay.
we worked with the trust, we worked with LSA, like we do on every bill, and worked internally with our staff attorneys.
So who received the final report from the trust?
I'm not aware of any final report. I don't know what that might be. I know that I received the maps.
So all you got in your hand was this map.
Yeah, the maps and then the language in section 7 of 1032 that lists each congressional district by county, township, precinct, and census block.
Okay, now you're saying maps as plural. Does that mean you got more than one map?
No, I think when I say maps plural, I'm talking about the map for the first congressional, the map for the second, and so on.
Oh, so you got a breakdown of the maps by each congressional district.
Yeah, in section 7 of the bill, it's broken out by county, township, precinct, and census block.
Mm-hmm. So we got that, that's in the bill. But you're saying that when they sent you these maps and they broke it down by each congressional district, they didn't send you any demographic data to go with the congressional districts.
The only thing I'm aware of is these maps being drawn on political performance. That's it.
Okay, very interesting. So as you stated, this is a time for public review and response. Is that final report that came from the vendor available for public view?
I'm not aware of what report you might be mentioning. I was provided the language in section 7 that talks about counties, talks about townships, precincts, census blocks, and the map that you have with you today.
Okay, now did the vendor send anything to LSA or to your attorneys besides the maps?
I don't know that.
Okay. And then lastly, who paid for this vendor's contract? Was any public funds utilized?
I don't know that. I don't have any idea. I wouldn't be able to guess.
So you have no idea who paid for this?
I do not.
And you have no idea if any public money was utilized?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. Permission to speak.
You recognize her, Ms. Shackelford.
So, as we debate this map, I want to draw your attention to the reality of Indiana's 7th congressional district, represented currently by Congressman Andre Carson. This district includes roughly 750,000 Hoosiers. Fewer than half, about 45.7%, identify as white. About 1/3, 32.5%, are Black. Nearly 15% are Hispanic. So a vast majority of residents are people of color. These are communities whose concerns about housing, small business growth, education, and equity should never be treated as optional. What is being considered today goes far beyond routine redistricting. These maps would fragment Indianapolis and divide District 7 across multiple congressional districts without a single centralized anchor. For a capital city that drives much of our state's economic activity, this creates serious challenges. How do we advance federal investment, modernize infrastructure, support small businesses, or strengthen our workforce when no member of Congress is accountable to Indianapolis as a whole? You dilute our urban city priority against suburban and rural needs. A fragmented map makes coordinated progress harder. It makes it more difficult for diverse communities to advocate for the resources they need and deserve. There are significant equity implications as well. Indianapolis is one of the most diverse areas in the state, second only to Lake County. Scattering these neighborhoods across districts dilutes our collective voice at a time when representation determines which priorities rise to the top and which communities receive long overdue attention. Implementing sweeping changes mid-cycle outside the standard census process also undermines transparency and public trust. Indianapolis deserves a congressional structure that reflects its demographic reality, supports its economic future, and strengthens democratic participation, not a structure that weakens it. This is not abstract. These are real people whose representation and political weight matter. When we withdraw the map, ignoring the demographic makeup of District 7, we weaken the ability of Black, Latino, immigrant, and multiracial communities to speak with a unified voice in Congress. We move their needs further from accountable federal leadership. My minority, majority, and majority Democrat district will be broken into 3 Republican congressional districts. Now, our urban, struggling neighborhood priorities will have to compete with Indiana's southeastern counties. Most likely, our 3 Republican congressional members will not live, work, or worship in our community. We lose that experience living from our representative, and most likely we have to travel to a rural area to argue our needs. That is why the amendments I offered yesterday were not only reasonable, but necessary. A district-specific Voting Rights Act analysis and a racial and ethnic equity impact note are the minimum steps we should take before approving a map of this magnitude. We owe that to the people we serve, and we owe it to Indiana's future. Because this map ignores the demographic reality of the district and fragments communities whose voices must remain strong, I am voting no. I urge my colleagues to view these numbers not as stats, but as the people behind them, and to consider who deserves to be heard in this chamber and in Congress. I am hoping this side of the aisle listen to the words that we are saying, and I am hoping that you take it to heart and vote no on this horrible piece of legislation. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Andrade.
The author yield.
The author yield, he yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. Representative Schmaltz, we keep hearing that these maps were sent from a national Republican redistricting group.
Trust, yes.
Trust.
Yes.
Once that information was handed down to you, was there any input put into consideration from the people here in the state or from any bipartisan legislative group?
Yeah, so legislative services participated as well, and our staff did.
What about the input from the public besides the committee hearing that happened on Tuesday?
That's where public comment happens, is in the committee hearings where it happened here on Tuesday. And if this bill does pass, will happen again in the Senate. That's the correct process.
So no input from the public in regards to how their maps are looking to the representation in their districts?
No, I think we all receive input from the public every day. I'm sure your email box and your phone calls that you get, I think we all get those. But the appropriate place for public comment is in a recorded sense, is in committee, which happened here Tuesday. And 43 people testify, and will predictably happen if this bill passes in the Senate next week in their committee, which will be a public hearing as well.
So you mentioned that 43 people testified in committee. How many of those were in favor of the maps?
I think 41.
41 out of the 43 people that testified
Yeah.
said these are good maps.
Yeah, I believe that's, I think, no, the other way around. Yeah, I think 41
So out of
people
Out of
opposed.
43 people, 41 were against the maps.
I believe that's right, yes.
So only 2 said these maps favor them and represent them well in DC.
Yes, that's right.
Only 2.
Yes, in that venue, you're correct, yes.
And since that input was given to the committee, we decided to still move forward with these maps and vote them out of committee without having to say, wait, let's go back and see if we could make these maps fair in representation to the people who are voicing their concern about how this is going to disenfranchise them.
Yeah, I don't know about the other members of the committee and the body of input that they received over time.
Sure.
But yes, if you're only asking the question of the process and how the steps worked, at that public hearing, we had 43 people testify, 41 people opposed, and we moved forward with the bill.
Okay. Thank you. Permission to speak.
You're recognized, Representative Andrade.
Northwest Indiana is my home. It's the community that I have the honor of serving, where I live, where I'm committed. It's where families work hard, where neighbors look out for each other, where people expect a fair shot at having their voices heard. And today, that community is being torn apart. These maps split Northwest Indiana. They cut through long-standing neighborhoods. They divide school districts, economic corridors, cities that are connected in every meaningful way. And all of this is being done for one reason: political gain. We should be honest about what is happening here. These maps were not drawn to strengthen representation or respect communities. They were drawn to strengthen political power. They were drawn to disenfranchise the voices of our Hoosiers who trust us to represent them, not discard them. Hoosiers across our state are struggling to believe the government listens. They see decisions being made out of sight. They see their communities being split without explanation. They see their voices diluted. And then we wonder why public trust erodes year after year. Northwest Indiana has a congressman, Frank Marvan, who represents our district in Washington, D.C. He has stood up for our region, fought for the people who live there. These new maps take that fair representation and put it at risk. It undermines the community that has contributed enormously to our state, and they do it without any justification that serves the people. This is my community. This is where I live. This is where my family gets to call home. No one gets to bully it, not for political advantage, not for convenience, not under the excuse of process. Hoosiers deserve better. They deserve a legislator that values public trust. They deserve districts that reflect real communities. They deserve leaders who will put people before party. This is not the Indiana that I believe in. It is not the Indiana that I know we can be, and Hoosiers do not deserve this. As I close, we all got voted to represent the people in our districts. We come here to do the people's business. And I hope that we are doing the right thing for those Hoosiers who are struggling today, who could barely make their budget, or struggling to pay the rent. The rising cost of utilities is pushing them to work 2 to 3 jobs. The families who have a child with disability who are hurting because their Medicare cuts have happened to them. I hope we could see beyond what's happening for political gain, and we truly vote what's best for the people that we represent. I will vote no. I stand with Northwest Indiana, and I will continue to fight for every Hoosier who refuses to be silenced. Thank you.
For discussion, Representative Campbell speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to ask my colleagues across the table one single question. Do you realize the impact that these maps will have? Do you understand the impact on your own communities? Every resident in Indiana, from the dunes to the Ohio River, will be hurt by these maps. Small town communities could be the ones hurt the most. 4 of our congressmen could be from Indianapolis, 4 out of 9. Is that fair representation for Indiana's rural communities? Someone living in Broad Ripple could represent farmers in Ripley County. This map is so gerrymandered that one of the blocks in my own neighborhood, just doors from my house, is in another district. Purdue University is cut in 2. Communities that should be a unified voice in Congress won't. Families who share the same schools, the same main streets, the same concerns about jobs and healthcare and their children's future won't have a unified voice. Our county clerks will be working overtime to implement these changes. A few from my own community contacted me to reach out. They're really going to have to go through address by address to make sure that people have the right ballots. They'll have to assign thousands of voters to new precincts, send out new cards, and update polling locations. These maps are going to cause chaos and a huge administrative burden. Hoosiers are tired of politics over the needs of people. Hoosiers don't want us in this building dividing any of our communities. By voting for this map, you are ignoring the needs of our communities, your communities. Property taxes are crushing homeowners. Utility bills are skyrocketing. Families are opening envelopes with bills hundreds of dollars more than they were last year. Healthcare costs keep climbing while wages stay flat. Childcare costs are as much as a mortgage payment. Hoosiers deserve better. They deserve a legislator that doesn't carve up their communities for political benefit. They deserve a legislator focused on their concerns, not political gimmicks. They deserve representatives who prioritize their struggles over partisan advantage. I urge this body to reject this map and let us get to work on the things that actually matter to the people that we represent. Thank you.
For discussion on the bill, Representative Summers, speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Mr. Speaker, I want to show you this picture. That picture is of my dad and his best friend that when Wallace came to town in the 60s, they were boycotting. And the gentleman behind him was his best friend, and also the gentleman that eventually eulogized him for his funeral. So they were very, very good friends. And I bring that in because we have a rich history in Indiana, and we have a rich history in our state. This piece of legislation is a direct threat to representation for our Black and brown communities. This is a plan that will fracture and dilute the voting power of communities of color and intentionally dilute their political influence, whatever political influence we've ever had. I want to take just a minute to talk about an area in my district. I'm right in the center. You know, Congressman Carson is my legislator. I live with one of the districts, Wayne Township. Wayne Township has a rich history of making sure their communities, that community is taken care of. The precinct people, the ward chair, you know, when we have ward chairs, really take care of the community and make sure that me as a representative and represent them is in that community, know those people. Everyone has come to me and said, what in the world is going on? And I can't answer because I really believe this is something that I've never seen before. You say that it's political convenience. That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. You have to have another reason why this is necessary. I wanted to call on our ancestors that walked these halls before us. I want to call out the late Congresswoman Julia Carson. I want to call out Representative Hurley Goodhall, Representative Bill Crawford, Representative Earl Harris Sr., my dad, Joe Summers, and Representative Mae Dickinson. I say for them, and I say for my IBLC members today, that you should be glad that all we ever wanted was equity and not retribution.
For discussion on the bill, Representative Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. Author yield, he yields.
Representative Smaltz, you've said now on numerous occasions the goal of this map is partisan advantage, so I want to talk about what that means in practice. Under national Republican policies, hundreds of thousands of Hoosiers have lost access to affordable health care. So when you say this map is designed for partisan advantage, are the sick and chronically ill Hoosiers harmed by those policies part of the group that mattered less in the calculation?
Was there a question there?
Are the chronically ill and sick Hoosiers harmed by the policies of national Republicans part of the group that mattered less in your calculation?
I think that'd be something to debate outside of this bill. I don't know that that is being impacted by House Bill 1032.
Republican budget cuts created a child care crisis that's forcing parents, especially mothers, to leave the workforce. When we say partisan advantage, are those working families the ones you've decided can afford less representation?
I think the budget process that we go through, we try to responsibly utilize the funds that the taxpayers, the state of Indiana provide to us in a way that is fiscally responsible. Always tough decisions have to be made in the budget. I've certainly lost things important to me in the budget. I'm looking forward to next session working on some childcare legislation. I was really pleased to have some people listen to me at committee talking about childcare legislation, reach out to me, and hopefully we can build a coalition that we can make some good changes.
Republicans in DC have discussed cutting Social Security and Medicare. When you pursue partisan advantage, are those seniors, the ones who earned those benefits, included in the group who no longer matter?
I'm not aware of those discussions in DC.
You have said that minority communities were not at all considered in drawing these lines. So when you say partisan advantage, is that a polite way of saying black and brown Hoosiers don't fit into the political model you're optimizing for?
These maps were drawn for political purposes and advantage. They were drawn using the last 3 presidential elections, the last 2 Indiana United States Senator elections. We back-checked those against the last 2 Secretary of State and Attorney General's elections as well.
You keep using the word advantage as if it's neutral, but it's obviously not. Political advantage means some people win and some people lose. So I guess my question is simply, who do you believe should lose?
What I do believe is that we're careful to draw the maps focusing on political advantage, and I think the maps indicate that.
Permission to speak.
You're recognized to speak.
I don't know about all of you. I haven't slept much this week. That's unusual for me. I have an 8-month-old. I still sleep. When I'm angry, when my wife and I go to bed angry, I still sleep. And she really sleeps. She snores in those moments, actually. When I've messed something up, no problem, lights out. But when I've been disappointed, let down, insulted, I can't shake it. I'm left wakeful. I'm disappointed that we're here spending precious time on political maneuvers while Hoosier families are preparing for the holidays and wondering how they'll afford health care, child care, rent, wages, groceries, let alone gifts for their kids. And emails, calls, and texts, they're begging us for help. And instead, we're debating maps drawn in Washington, D.C. by Washington, D.C. I'm disappointed because of others have said, I know the people in this chamber. I like most of you. I've had you to my home. You've been among the first I've told when we were expecting our second child. I've seen you do good, serious work on behalf of your communities. And watching some of you who know better yield so easily to the demands of an increasingly unpopular president, an increasingly chaotic Congress, and a governor who doesn't care about any of us, watching you fall in line with a national strategy that has nothing to do with the needs of Hoosiers, that has been so deeply disappointing. But like many in my caucus have said, my disappointment is softened to sadness, deep sadness, that we've reached a moment where this body can so casually, so brazenly declare that the majority of Hoosiers don't matter. Sadness that we're willing to tell whole communities, many of them marginalized already, that their voices are expendable, that their neighborhoods are negotiable, that their representation is optional if it happens to be inconvenient to the party in power. Sadness that in service to DC insiders and national funders, we'd abandon our own neighbors. Sadness that partisan advantage has now overtaken the fundamental purpose of representative democracy, to give a voice to the people who trust us to protect them. You know, at its core, democracy requires 3 simple fundamentals: that voters choose their leaders, not the other way around; that every community has a meaningful voice, not just the politically convenient ones; that power is earned, not engineered. This bill violates all 3. It redraws districts not because the people changed, but because one party has changed dramatically under President Trump and Governor Braun and Micah Beckwith. This bill dilutes the voices of marginalized Hoosiers who already fight to be heard. And it tries to manufacture outcomes that can't be justified any other way than by partisan political advantage. Those aren't legislative actions, they're telltale signs of a democracy that's drifting off its foundation. Earlier this week, the author evoked history in the defense of this bill. But in his farewell address, George Washington issued one of the clearest warnings in American history. He warned that the spirit of party, his words, would one day tempt leaders to value victory over virtue. He believed that factions would persuade elected officials to serve themselves rather than the people. That partisanship, unrestrained, would usurp the will of people and replace it with the will of those who simply cling to power at all costs. Friends, look around. This just isn't a spirit of party. This is party raised over people. Party elevated above representation. Party raised above local control and fairness in the communities we swore an oath to protect, above the very institution we're lucky to serve in. Washington feared that one day political actors would redraw the rules rather than face the voters honestly. Today, those fears feel less like prophecy and more like your playbook. The author told us repeatedly that the purpose of this map is partisan advantage, not competitiveness, not representation, advantage. He said Democrats gerrymander in other states, so Republicans should too. So I want to ask you this. When did we forget the lessons we teach our kids? The ones sacred to our faith, lessons that say we ought not meet evil with evil, but rise above it. Since when did Indiana, a state that prides itself on its independence and common sense, decide to base its ethics on whatever Massachusetts or Connecticut or Texas does? Since when did we give up on leading and start imitating? Indiana doesn't dilute Hoosier voices because someone else diluted someone else's. We shouldn't tear apart communities because someone else tore apart theirs. We shouldn't hand the pen to Washington, D.C. and call it local control. And here's the strangest part of all. We've also been told that Congress should fix it for everyone. And it bears repeating. Your party controls everything. The House, the Senate, the White House. If you care at all about fairness, you could end it tomorrow, end gerrymandering nationwide tomorrow. That's not what this is about, and you know it. Because the author all week has been saying the quiet part out loud. This map tears apart communities whose cohesion is essential. It weakens the voices of Black and brown Hoosiers who already struggle to be heard. It tells moderates, independents, and anyone outside the ruling party that their vote is ornamental, not consequential. So yeah, I'm sad today. Sad that this chamber, which could be a place of serious work, instead is being used as a tool of national partisanship. Sad that instead of helping families who are hurting, we're helping operatives who are not from this state, operatives who make a lot of money off of our division. Sad that the dignity of our neighbors has become incidental to the pursuit of power. But I'm hopeful too. Hopeful because history has a long memory. And history will absolutely remember the vote tally today. It'll remember the votes from this entire week. It'll remember the choice we all make. It'll remember who defended the voice of their neighbors and who helped to silence them. For that reason, I'll be voting no, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Hatcher. You're recognized to speak on the bill.
Mr. Speaker and members of the House, unfortunately, here in Indiana, some communities, especially those that are diverse, urban, and economically vital, have too often found themselves navigating systems that were not designed to fully support their growth or reflect their voices. Northwest Indiana understands this reality. Indianapolis understands it. So do the diverse neighborhoods of Fort Wayne, Evansville, South Bend, and communities across the state where Black, brown, immigrant, and working class families have built strong and resistant places, despite policies that have not always recognized or invested in their strengths. These communities are central to the success of the state. My community, Northwest Indiana, alone contributes $35 billion a year to this state's economy. Too often, the very places that drive Indiana's economic strength are the same places that struggle to receive proportional investment or political respect. They are expected to contribute, but not empowered to lead. They're relied upon, but not fully represented. They are essential, yet they are consistently treated as expendable. When a community becomes more diverse, more politically independent, more assertive about its needs, The state has responded with a reflex to manage these communities rather than empower them, to limit them rather than to lift them, and to contain them rather to collaborate with them. This containment has taken different forms over the decades, from school funding formulas that widen gaps instead of closing them, economic strategies that bypass urban neighborhoods, state intervention that polices behavior more than it supports growth, narratives that place blame rather than share responsibility. And now, political boundaries are redrawn not to reflect people, but to restrain their political power. You say political advantage, but the truth is, these are inherently discriminatory maps because they only impact the minority, majority areas of this state. This is why current redistricting debates strike such a nerve. They do not arise in isolation. They echo a broader pattern, one where certain communities are expected to contribute economically, culturally, civically, yet remain limited in the power that they're allowed to hold. Too often, Indiana races to be the first in wrong things, first to restrict rights, first to weaken worker protections, first to pass laws that make life harder for the poor, the sick, and the vulnerable, the marginalized. First to close the door on voices that challenge the status quo. And yet, when it comes to progress, Indiana lags behind on public health, behind on maternal mortality, behind on mental health access, behind on clean energy investment, behind on gun safety measures, behind on policies that lift families and strengthen communities, behind on civil rights protections that most of the nation adopted long ago. We are over-policed and underfunded. We're taxed but not invested in. We're held responsible for challenges rooted in decades of disinvestment by the state. For minority majority communities, this is not commentary, it's a lived experience. The state moves with urgency when the goal is restriction. But when the goal is support or investment, urgency evaporates. Our current congressional leadership understands this struggle in a way that is both lived and intentional. He has worked directly with federal partners to bring vital resources home. He secured funding to replace aging infrastructure that our communities have been forced to rely on. And he has fought to cover the cost of unfunded mandates that the state of Indiana continues to impose without providing the means to meet them. His work is a reminder that when representation reflects the realities of the people, it can bring tangible relief, strengthen local economies, and ensure that communities like ours are not left to shoulder burdens alone. He understands the district he represents. And this is what makes line drawing in Indiana so consequential. This is not just a matter of geography. It's a measure of whose voices are valued, whose are managed. Communities like Gary and Indianapolis are not afraid of representation. They're afraid of representation that manipulates to keep them on the sidelines. Representation is a right for each and every person in the state of Indiana. Reject this map. Stand on the right side of history and let the people of Northwest Indiana keep the one thing that they have continued to fight for all along, a voice. I implore you, vote no.
Further discussion, Representative Harris. You're recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. A lot of you I have not seen for months. A lot of you I have not talked to for months. It's been great seeing you, but this is not how I wanted that to happen. We are here during the beginning of December when we should be hanging out with family, hanging out with friends, getting ready for the holidays coming up. I don't know about you, but I have not bought one Christmas gift yet. Part of that is because we are here. You know, we've heard the author say this is all about political advantage, political advantage. We keep hearing that. This is just political advantage. That's a good way to phrase something that's not 100% accurate. We know what this will do to Black and brown communities. We know what this will do to disenfranchise and dilute the minority vote. So let's just be real and get it out there. let's be real about some other things. We also hear people whom say we should do this is because Indiana is a red state, so it deserves a 9-0 makeup of the Congress. That is not accurate. The president only received 58% of the vote, not 85. The governor only received 54% of the vote. That does not scream red. Why are we trying to disenfranchise 40% of the state? Our job is to take care of the state. And for some reason, some people here and people who are not here in another part of the country feel like 40% does not matter. We keep hearing, well, gerrymandering happens all over the place. This isn't just, Indiana. People do that. This is beyond gerrymandering. This is mid-decade redistricting. That's beyond what gerrymandering is. And you're correct. Does gerrymandering happen in other states? It does. And I said this in the committee, and I'm going to repeat it. All of us, when we were a child, heard the whole thing of, well, if your friends jumped off the bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge? So we should not be following up and looking at using an excuse and saying, well, others do this, so we should do this. We've heard some people talk about the map, and I want to get into a couple of things. District 1, where I live, Congressman Frank Mervan is our congressperson. District 1 has been a Northwest Indiana district. Located in Northwest Indiana, the representative takes care of the counties in Northwest Indiana, Lake where I live, Porter, LaPorte, etc. How does anyone, whether they are Republican or Democrat, going to effectively represent District 1, which is no longer, which if this passes will no longer be only in Northwest Indiana, it actually shoots over to the eastern part of the state. It actually comes down to what I would argue as the central part of the state. How is that going to be effective? Look at the other districts as well. How does a congressperson, Republican or Democrat, successfully represent the people in Lake County with our makeup, our things like the steel mills, lakefronts, etc., and people that are in other counties that do not have any similarity? How is that supposed to work? You've also heard today, as people have talked about, Marion County, where we are now. How is it going to be an effective use to have Marion County split up amongst 4 congressional members and having districts that take up part of Marion County, part of Indianapolis, and go south to the state line? How is that going to be effective? We've also heard about the precinct issues. How does it make sense to split up precincts over multiple congressional districts? None of this makes sense. Multiple of us yesterday had amendments because we have not talked about and we have not had real conversation about the cost of this to the state, especially to the locals. I mentioned yesterday unfunded mandate. How does that work out? The confusion that it's going to cause, how does that work out? Precincts that have different congressional districts in them, again, multiple ballots will be printed. Multiple reasons for causing confusion amongst the people that live there. We also heard, we know we have serious issues we need to deal with. Serious issues. We've heard about them today, related to healthcare, related to education, related to food, related to so many things, and we keep hearing, we're going to work on those. Why are we not working on them in these 2 weeks that we were called in early? If those were real priorities, we would be working on them now, not focusing these 2 weeks on redistricting. Real Hoosiers, our Hoosiers that we represent, that put us in office to take care of, to represent, and be there for them, not again for power for someone that's outside of the state. We are taking away choice. We're taking away choice. And I give Representative Bartlett credit because he says this, and I like to steal this from him. The voters are supposed to choose us. We are not supposed to choose the voters. That is not what's happening. And as I bring this to a close, I also want to point out something that I know this was referenced earlier. My friends on the R side, the only person we've heard from is the author of the bill. Where is anyone else up here to defend this if you truly believe this is what we should be doing? Haven't seen it? Would love to see, would love to hear. It's not happening. I know that this is an uncomfortable vote for a lot of, most of, all of, whatever that makeup is. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's not easy. but we have to do what's right for the people of Indiana. I encourage you, stand strong, take care of the people that put us into office. Vote no.
Further discussion. Representative Smith to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. Most of us do not want to be here, but we know why we are here. We're here because of the big, beautiful bill and the president's detrimental decisions and his bizarre behavior as it comes to representing the people of this great nation. It is quite evident that in his years upon this earth, that he has not learned that for every action, there are equal reactions. There are intended and unintended consequences. The man who once said, "I am the most popular person in this world." And then he thought about it. And he said, well, maybe next to Jesus Christ. That man has not read that pride comes before the fall. The direct consequence is that his polling is steady dropping. And like he did when he was defeated prior, he is trying to fix it himself. On that occasion, he called on the red states to bail him out, to cover up his past. He called on the Georgia Secretary of State, and he asked, find me 11,780 votes. Now he fears a voters' revolution again, and he fears the loss of control of the House and maybe the Senate, and he's calling on his red states to bail him out, to cover his tracks. It is sad that he doesn't understand when you think you're in control, that is probably the point that you are least in control. But next year, he will come to know who is really in control, and he is not the one. The one who is in control is the one who sits up high and he looks down low. He cannot stop what is divine ordered. Justice will be served. Nevertheless, the president is trying again to fix it himself, Mr. Almighty. Before he sought criminal-minded persons to steal him votes, now he's seeking those who are willing to follow him blindly, rally to his every call to do midterm redistricting. And for those of you who have morals and respect for the law and have resisted, and some have even said, I will not vote for this bill, I am going to be in the no category. He has used fear. He has used bullying. He's used his minions to put pressure on you. And so we find ourselves here today. What I've discovered in life is when you do something wrong, you got to cover it up. I remember as a child, I would do something wrong. My mother would come home and she would ask me, did I do it? I had to do more wrong. I had to lie. I did it, and then I lied. I even made it worse. And what I have discovered in life is when you do something wrong, you got to cover it up, and you end up doing something that's more wrong. We're here to do more harm. We're here to do harm. We're here to do wrong. In his efforts to cover up his wrong and redirect the future of his party, he has you, the willing and the unwilling, here doing wrong. Just a snap view of what we've done wrong just this week. We've discarded House rules. We've changed timelines. We've ignored state statutes. The map is supposed to be drawn after the census. And guess what? We took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this state, to abide by the laws of this state. And here we are. Those that are supposed to be the cream of the crop, violating not only our house rules, but breaking the law. We're taking steps that are damaging our democracy. And you know, there was a time, and I've shared this with before, that I wasn't too pleased with being American. When I had to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, I would just be moving my lips and not uttering the words. But I've come to understand that this is the greatest nation in this world. And guess what? We're playing games with it. We're willing to destroy it for politics. What happened to the legislature that I joined 35, now 36 years ago? What happened to it? We had such high respect for each other. We were more civil than we are now. We worked across the aisle. We had high morals. And I was here, I remember the first day I got here, a couple of people told me on both sides, if you give your word, don't break it. We had high ethics. We did what was best for the state. I didn't always agree, but it was a majority opinion that it was best for the state. Are we at all concerned about our democracy today? I am distressed. We had wholesome values then. What has happened to us? I represent the 14th district, which is in Lake County. It's in the northern section of Indiana. And we are represented by a congressman that I totally respect, Congressman Mervan. His district will morph from 3 counties into 9 counties. And I have never seen a person of the congressional level that has been more representative of the people of his district, more concerned, more available. I admire him greatly. But he comes from a Lake County perspective. And can he adequately serve all 9 of these counties? I'm sure if God be on his side that he's going to try to do it. But I recall when I first got into office and did not understand the entire region, and I was given 2 precincts in Hobart, even though I tried, even though I made myself available, even though I tried to be available for them and to represent them, I think I represented Gary better than I did Hobart. I hate to admit that, but that comes from where you live and those people that you're part of. Will he be able to represent those persons in this expanded district? And if the victor is from the expanded district, will they be able to represent the needs of a Gary, Indiana, of a Hammond, Indiana, of a East Chicago, Indiana, or now a Maryville, Indiana? Will they be able to do that? And you know what? When we put our names on the ballot boxes, we're not saying that we want to be served. This is what we're doing here to say we want to be served. We say we are supposed to be of service to the people. Have we forgotten that? Are we more concerned about redistricting than health care? My constituents are concerned about health care. Are we more concerned about redistricting than feeding those who are hungry in our state? I have hungry people in my district. As a child, I didn't have everything I wanted, but I never went to bed hungry. And there are those who are experiencing that hunger. Are we more concerned about redistricting than child care for those who cannot afford to provide it for their little ones? My God, where are we? Children know when they're doing wrong. They try to cover it up. Here we are, adults in leadership. Are we not concerned about doing wrong? Are we not concerned about people of color? Is this something that you would like done to you? Our country, our state, is more than political moves. Our state has been about democracy, about justice, about fairness, equal opportunity, and ethical behavior. We go through the ethics training every year. Have we absorbed anything from that training? You know what? I'm convinced that sometimes when things are planned for evil, there's a force that means them for good. And once before, because of Republican behavior, you thrusted the Democratic Party into leadership of this great house. And I think you might be on the verge of doing it again. A statewide poll in August of 2025 found that 51% of registered voters were against redistricting at that time. And 45% of those strongly opposed redistricting. Another poll from Independent Indiana found 53% of Hoosiers opposed mid-decade redistricting, while only 34% supported it. The sentiment against redistricting appears to be stronger and stronger, and it overwhelms the support. One poll found opposition sentiment was twice as intense as support among Indiana residents. And aren't we here to serve our people, to represent our people? This is a representative form of government. So you're representing the minority rather than the majority of Hoosiers. The opposition also spans party lines. Of course, the majority are Democrats, and almost all independents are opposed. And there is a significant number of Republicans, those that you identify with. They are against this mid-decade redistricting. And in addition to the poll information, we've seen through the marches on this great house, indicating that thousands and thousands of people are opposed. I know you've gotten phone calls, you've gotten text messages, you've received emails, you have seen people as you walk through the streets that said they are opposed. But we've become an institution that doesn't listen to the will of the people. You're determined to do what you want to do, and there's a consequence for that. Mid-decade redistricting may be waking up the sleeping giant, the people of the state. The people are not stupid and gullible, as Trump said on one occasion. You may be creating a force that is multifaceted, that is interracial, and will span all economic levels. The bill may end up being a blessing in disguise for the Democratic Party. Oh yeah, you can draw the districts you have the power. You have the numbers. But those districts that you draw that you may see as have the advantage of being red may end up voting blue. You don't have any control of that. And you know what? I have a feeling that you're going to come out the loser in this situation. There's an old adage that says when you dig a ditch or dig a grave, you better dig too. People do to you what you permit them to do. Some of you have said Trump has threatened to withhold funds from Indiana if the redistricting is not done. When did we get to a point that we would know that a person is using governmental funds for political purposes? When did we get there? And you know what? You putting your rubber stamp of approval on antisocial, anti-democratic behavior. I heard a Republican say recently via the television when California started to look at its redistricting in response to what Texas did, that it's disfranchising California voters. Didn't what Texas do disenfranchise Texans? Wouldn't what you're getting ready to do disenfranchise Indiana voters? Finally, go ahead, redistrict. I promise you that we will not agonize, we're going to organize. We won't boo you. That'll be too easy. We will vote. We won't be discouraged. We will be driven to victory. We won't just lick our wounds, but we will put on our armor for war. You ask for it, and we'll give it to you. I urge you to vote no on this bill. I urge you to send a message that says Indiana does not have minions. It does not have puppets. It does not have pawns. We have ethical, intelligent, honorable people within this state. God bless America. God bless Indiana. God, please turn this effort to make this state an entirely a red state, that we have the diversity to see the blue after this vote is taken. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Novak, you're recognized to speak on the bill. Mr. Speaker,
Ladies and gentlemen, before becoming a state rep, I was on the LaPorte County Council. We were in charge of the fiscal responsibility of the county. I'm hearing from colleagues back home that this is going to cost LaPorte County a substantial amount of money to redo all the elections and everything. My district, and that's not to include what it's going to cost over in Porter County, but my district cannot afford another unfunded mandate put on them as we're dealing with the effects of SB 1.
Could you speak into the microphone? I don't think the audience can hear you.
I'm sorry. As we're dealing with the effects of SB 1 right now, and we're millions of dollars short, and we're trying to deal with that, and now we got another unfunded mandate coming on top of that. I was caucused in to be a state rep on October 18th of this year. My job is to represent the 9th District. Unlike a lot of my colleagues here today, I will be representing my district by voting no today.
Further discussion, Representative Dan Chesser to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I rise today in opposition to this bill, and I ask you to join me. Please consider this vote not as creating a political competitive advantage for the next election cycle. Please do not vote yes simply as a show of loyalty to a political party. Instead, I ask you to focus on the long-term implications for Hoosiers. I've spent my career in economic development, and Hoosiers across our state depend upon economic developers and policymakers to create an environment wherein they can achieve their dreams. And they've let us know they aren't dreaming of political control, but their hopes are that together we will create opportunities for them, for their children, their neighbors, and their communities. As my day job in economic development, I get to work with a wonderful team. And our goal is to redevelop the former U.S. Army ammunition site in Clark County. Since 1998, we have been working to transform 6,000 acres of property formerly owned by the federal government into a thriving commerce center. We were empowered with this mission by garnering support from many community leaders throughout the region and working with our congressman who knew us, understood us, and was focused on our needs. He was a voice in Washington, our voice in Washington, and we could call upon him to prioritize what we needed. Our local leaders did not do this for political gain, but instead their focus was on providing opportunities for the residents who live near us. We don't know what the future needs will force us to work together with our representative in DC to achieve our economic objectives. But I do know that at some point a need will arise. And this map scares me. We may not have the attention of our voice in Washington to help us with what we need. Parts of Congressional District 9 now, if this passes, will encompass 2 metropolitan statistical areas, Indianapolis and Louisville, and those regions have much different needs. If this map passes, that's what we will be forced with. What is the likelihood that our next congressional representative, if he or she hails from Marion County, will understand our community enough to truly fight on our behalf the way that we will need them to? How will he or she help us create opportunities for Southern Hoosiers to achieve their dreams? I'm not convinced we will get the attention we need to serve them. So I humbly ask you to think of this vote not as a competitive advantage for the next election cycle, nor consider it a show of allegiance to a political party. Instead, I ask you to focus on the long-term implications of these districts on Hoosiers' lives. And I ask you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Gore to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hoosiers, you can't see it, but most of the members of the majority caucus are having conversations in the back or in the hallways. Some of our more tenured members are so anti-woke, they've taken to nodding off. Clearly, they're very interested in what their colleagues have to say. You know, Mr. Speaker, thanks for letting me talk. We've spent the last week watching a process that can only be described as an utter disgrace to the democratic ideals we claim to uphold. Let's start with the maps themselves because they tell the whole story. In my home county, Marion County, the largest population center in the state, the financial, economic, artistic, cultural engine of our state, the majority decided the only way to maintain power was to carve us up like a Christmas ham. One intersection, 38th and Emerson, now sits at the center of a political jigsaw so absurd that depending on which street corner you are on, you're in one of 3 different congressional districts. Walk a few miles due northwest, congratulations, you're in a 4th. That's not representation. That's cracking a community on purpose. And you claim you did it for political performance. But take a quick drive to 38th and Emerson, then come back and try to tell me with a straight face that the impact of these maps isn't racist on its face. But the insult doesn't end at the maps. The process you used is perhaps even more offensive. The public and members of this body saw this map for the first time on Monday. That's just 4 days ago for those keeping track at home. Then you gave Hoosiers less than a day's notice for a midday committee hearing after a snowstorm, and now, like a political smash and grab, you're demanding final passage before the public even has time to understand what's being done to their representation. A quick note, most members of the majority are still not in their seats. That's not transparency. That's not accountability. That is a betrayal of the democratic system. And as someone who works in public safety, let me also tell you that this is dangerous. My congressman, who started his career in public safety as a law enforcement officer, is responsive to public safety, to the sheriff's office where I work, to IMPD, to the people dealing with the realities of public safety on the ground in Marion County. And I want to point something out. Some of the loudest critics of Indy's public safety challenges sit here in this chamber and in this building. They never hesitate to use my hometown as a political punching bag, to lecture us about crime, to wag their fingers when it thinks it makes them look like a big boy on Twitter. But now with this map, they're making it harder, not easier for us to address the issues they claim to care about. If you slice Marion County into 4 congressional districts stretching towards state lines, none of those members of Congress will have the deep knowledge of our challenges or the incentive to fight for the resources our community needs. This map doesn't just weaken our political voice. It weakens our ability to secure federal support for public safety, mental health treatment, drug intervention programs, violence reduction efforts, everything we rely upon to keep people safe. So let's be very clear. You cannot spend years denigrating Marion County for its public safety struggles and then turn around and pass a bill that ensures we will have less representation, less advocacy, and fewer tools to fix those challenges. But that's exactly what this bill does. And for what? To add 2 more Republicans to the House? Republicans hold the House now, and it's been an abysmal failure. A bang-up job, Congressman. A remarkably unproductive Congress.
State your point. We'll take a recess.
Gore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In summation, nice to see so many of you back. Our founders warned us about the tyranny of the majority. The tyranny of the majority. They warned us that a government that manipulates the structures of representation to cement its own power becomes unresponsive, unaccountable, and illegitimate. And that's what this bill does. It's not about good governance. It's about responding. It's not about responding to some moment, as some talking points suggest. It's about using the power you have today to ensure that voters have less power tomorrow. I won't pretend otherwise. I will not sanitize it. I will not quietly participate in the fiction that this process reflects anything close to respect for my neighbors. Hoosiers deserve representatives they choose, not representatives drawn strategically to choose them. Abraham Lincoln put it best in the Gettysburg Address. He spoke of a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. This bill, as has been expressly stated by the author, makes it of the party, by the party, and for the party. And someday, when the winds change, and history guarantees they will, I hope those in power show your voters more respect than you're showing mine today. Join me in voting no.
Before we move on, we had a question and discussion. Point of order was withdrawn. Representative Miller, speak on the bill. He yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schmaltz, we've had probably 15 of our members get up and speak opposed to this bill. You've had none of your members get up and speak positively about the bill. Why are you finding it so hard for members of your own party to support this bill?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them that question.
Any idea why you think they wouldn't? Do you feel badly about the fact they won't come up and support your bill?
I think you'd probably need to ask them about that.
Fair. How long have Democrats been gerrymandering seats away from Republicans?
I think the last map I saw was 2001.
Fair to say a long time. We've been doing it a while.
Yeah.
And so you all last drew the maps in 2021. Were you not paying attention? Were you asleep at the wheel? Were you not doing your job? Why not rig them then? Why are we rigging them now?
I think at that time we made the best maps we could do.
Those were the best maps you could do?
I thought so at the time.
But you clearly have good maps now. Couldn't you have done that in 2021?
I think that what has changed is the political landscape across the country. So we have decided to draw these maps for political performance.
It's changed in 4 years?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. And so when you drew them in 2021, the evil Democrats were still rigging the system. You didn't come back in 2022 and try to redraw the maps, did you?
Oh, no, we did not.
2023?
We did not.
2024?
Nope.
Did we come back this session, this past session, and try to redraw the maps?
In session 2025 earlier, no. 2025 now.
Correct.
Yes, in special session, yes.
Yeah. It was only after Trump asked you to find 2 seats did we even come up with this idea of redistricting. Is that correct?
No, I think the trigger was the governor of the state of Indiana requested, called a special session, and that's where we are today.
And he just pulled that out of nowhere. He just did that.
You'd have to ask him that question. I wouldn't know.
Who currently holds the U.S. House? What party controls the U.S. House?
The Republicans do.
What about the Senate?
Republicans do.
What party is the president from?
He's a Republican.
And so in the last 30 years, do you know how many years the Republicans have controlled the House of Representatives?
I don't know the answer to that.
It's 22, meaning the Democrats have controlled 8 of those years. And so when are we going to benefit from the rigging that we are supposedly doing? We are rigging the system. And this is why we're here, correct? Democrats are rigging the system. And so you need to come in and fix it because we're just running roughshod over the Republicans. Is that right?
I think we're here because the tools that are available to us is to be here redrawing our maps for political performance. And that's the tool that the Constitution has given us. It's the tool that the Supreme Court has upheld. It's the tool that's consistent with our rules and our laws and our Constitution.
I appreciate that, Representative. I'm not suggesting we can't be here. That's not the tact. I'm simply saying that if Democrats weren't rigging the system, we wouldn't be in this position. Fair to say? You're only doing this in retribution for Democrats rigging the system.
I'm not doing anything other than working on maps that create a political performance and a political advantage.
All right. Permission to speak.
You're recognized, Representative Miller.
I can't imagine how embarrassed you all must be. In my 3 years in this body, I've heard the refrain over and over and over again, we're not DC. Indiana makes its own rules. We make our own decisions. We don't take orders from the federal government. But today you let Washington walk right in this chamber and tell you how to do your jobs. It makes you look weak. And it makes you look like you can't make a decision without the governor and the president telling you what it's going to be. You could have stood up. You could have found your backbone. You could have put this state above partisan politics, but instead, you let yourselves get pushed around. You got bullied by the governor and the president, and you caved. Here's a thought. If Indiana Republicans are willing to abandon their own principles, toss aside the rules they wrote, and normalize mid-cycle redistricting simply because they have the power to, then we're paving a very dangerous road for the future. What kind of political structure are we leaving for our children if the new standard becomes, if you don't like the electoral map, just change it whenever you want? If there are seats you think you need to fix, then do what candidates are supposed to do, go campaign and earn them. Here's the best part of that. Those aren't my words. Those are your words. Your own members are saying that. Back when the president was only suggesting you do this, before he started threatening you with primaries to force your hand, a majority of you opposed this exact idea. You said it was wrong. You said it was destabilizing. You said it was unnecessarily. And frankly, I'm disappointed in you, honestly. I saw so many of you over the summer that said you were opposed to redistricting, only to find your statement of support a couple months later. So I rise today with a question every Hoosier deserves to hear answered out loud. If the maps that you drew in 2021 were as fair, transparent, and carefully crafted as you repeatedly told the public they were, then why are we back here? Why are we reopening the maps mid-decade? Let's go to the record, because the record's not convenient for you. In 2021, you stood at these very microphones and you declared the maps were, quote, the culmination of a months-long effort, which included listening to Hoosiers across the state. Not rushed, not incomplete, a culmination. The Speaker of this body said at the time, I'm confident we delivered fair maps that ensure every Hoosier voter counts. You all issued press release after press release insisting the maps were fair, balanced, data-driven, reflective of population shifts, a model for other states. You told Hoosiers the job was done and done well. And now suddenly the maps you defended as fair and representative are defective. Now suddenly the same people who drew the lines want a do-over behind closed doors midstream. We're being asked to pretend like your 2021 praise never happened. We're being asked to ignore your own words, your own votes, and your own glowing speeches about how perfect the maps were. We're being asked to believe that the very people who created the original problem are somehow here to fix it. Let me add something else. This isn't about fairness anymore. It's about fear. Fear of competition, fear of accountability, fear that voters might decide they want something different, and why wouldn't they? You all have been in charge of this legislature for 20 years. Republicans have controlled the U.S. House for 22 out of the last 30 years, and what have people gotten for it? Higher utility costs, childcare in the thousands of dollars per month, if you can even find childcare, higher grocery bills, unattainable health care. You're afraid that the policies that you're pushing that led us to this very place are going to take you out of power in 2026. When fairness becomes inconvenient, fear takes over, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Let me put it plainly. If the maps were fair in 2021, they're still fair today. And if they weren't fair in 2021, then the people who drew them should not be the ones trusted to draw them today. You can't have it both ways. Hoosiers deserve consistency. Hoosiers deserve honesty. They deserve a legislature that doesn't move the goalposts because you can't say no to the governor and the president. They deserve leaders who earn their seats, not redraw them.
For discussion, Representative Bauer, speak on the motion or speak on the bill. Got the yields.
Thank you, Representative Smalls.
Yes.
You said in committee that Massachusetts 9-0 maps were exceptionally imbalanced. Is that right?
I think I might have said exceptionally. I'd have to remember back for the exact wording, but it's 9-0, 60% Democrat, 40% Republican state.
You said
I think
exceptionally
is, yeah, okay.
imbalanced.
I'll take that.
Okay. And what outcome are your maps intended to create here in Indiana?
Well, depending on the election, it will replicate that.
Which exact number would be then?
9-0.
9-0.
9-0, yes.
Exceptionally imbalanced. Representative Smaltz, you said this is a retaliation for California, correct?
I did mention California in my testimony. It's 50-2, I believe there. 50 Democrats, 2 Republicans. I believe it's
Sure.
40% Republican, roughly.
40% Republican. And in California, wasn't it the voters who passed Prop 50 to allow this to occur there?
Yeah, I think that is how that process worked.
Okay. And Indiana doesn't allow for that process, right?
That's right.
In fact, it's the legislature who gets to decide how the maps are drawn.
Yes, that is correct. Every state in the union has the opportunity to establish laws for the way they want to do it. I think California has established that. They may be unwinding it. I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
what they're doing.
But you said you didn't draw these maps. It was the DC group, the National Republican Redistricting Trust?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, Representative Smaltz, I'm just wondering, will the revenge stop after this bill passes?
I think you got to look at the nation as a whole. And this may be the new normal of what the law allows us to do, what the Supreme Court has upheld, what the Constitution say, and then look at each individual state and see what their laws are. I mean, I've seen some states, Virginia, for instance, has a redistricting commission that I think they're right in the middle of a very hustled effort to unwind that. I think there's some other states that are doing that as well. I don't know for sure, though.
Okay. In fact, hasn't Illinois said if we pass these maps in Indiana, they will simply reconvene and cancel out the 2 districts that you draw? You understand that?
Yeah, I think this is available. This may be the level playing field. This may be what states can do and may do over the next several cycles.
All right. Permission to speak.
You recognize Representative Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I cannot pretend to understand some of the anguish that you are feeling over this vote. To me, it's simple. Don't rig the maps for a political advantage. The author of the 9-0 maps has already said the goal is political gain. Redraw Indiana, erase Democrat seats, help DC save its House majority. If your policies are this unpopular, you're afraid of losing Congress, maybe the problem isn't the voters. It's the policies or unfulfilled campaign promises. Promises to lower the groceries, to fully cover IVF treatments, to cut energy and electric prices, to fix the housing crisis. These are the issues that Hoosier families want us to address. These are the kind of bills we could be working on today. Instead, we're here in December, less than a year before the midterms, being asked to replace maps drawn with the exact same census data used in 2021, not because the population has changed, not because a court ordered it, only because politics demanded it. The author and those of you voting for this bill are making it clear that you do not believe our maps should reflect communities. We were called here at the request of DC to serve a political purpose, to protect power, not people. And our constituents deserve better than a government that redraws lines when elections don't go its way. They deserve honesty. They deserve transparency. They deserve stability instead of confusion and chest thumping. Now, I also don't know what type of persuasion was used by DC politicians who flew here twice, or what persuasion was used when many of you flew to Washington yourselves. I wasn't invited, neither was the public. But at my own town hall in my district, not one person supported this plan. That is what the people in Indiana think. What happens in California isn't an excuse for what happens here in Indiana. Two wrongs don't make a right. They don't make democracy stronger, they weaken it. And we should be holding ourselves to a higher standard guided by fairness, respect for the voters that we serve. People are asking us for leadership, not imitation of the worst behavior that you claim to oppose. If we truly want to be like California and Illinois, then let's raise our minimum wage above the federal low rate of $7.25. Let's pass paid family and medical leave so parents can care for their children when they're sick without losing their livelihood. Let's pass universal pre-K so every 4-year-old has a fair start instead of a child's education depending on a lottery and their parents' income. All these policies would have been ruled non-germane to this bill because what we are doing here today, the first bill that took us away from our districts and our families the week after Thanksgiving, does not help people. The public will remember who stood up for democracy and who tried to redraw it. Long after this current president leaves office and long after this rushed map is forgotten, people remember your choice today. And it's a clear choice to put people over party or the opposite. A State House Republican openly said these maps were generated to create the greatest advantage for Republicans. Unfortunately, you do not only serve Republicans. And if our legislative maps were more competitive, maybe you would understand why that comment is so wrong. We are here to best serve all of the people, not only those who share your party affiliation. And that comment from leadership explains why comments from your side echo the same message, calling this a battle of good versus evil. That we must unite as Republicans. Those are your words. Moves like this deepen the polarization and pull us further apart from the real problems that are facing our communities. To the public, these maps were produced by a Washington-based political group called the National Republican Redistricting Trust. Its mission is to influence redistricting strategy nationwide. And to the members of this chamber, is that who we want guiding Indiana's decisions? This legislation is the worst example of partisanship I have seen come out of this House. This map is not balanced, it's not fair, it is not just. Since taking office, I find myself repeating this often. With great power comes great responsibility. Maybe we are different, Democrats and Republicans, because while your motto seems to be, when you can't beat them, join them, ours is simple. When they go low, we go high. Don't turn your backs on this institution that I've held the greatest respect for my entire life. I still believe in it, and the public needs to know that you do too. Remember who you serve. Put people over party and vote no.
For discussion, Representative Garcia-Wilbur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. There's been a lot of rhetoric around who bears responsibility for the bill before us today. While I'm most sympathetic to the idea that all this started in Washington, D.C., ordering a fraction of Republican states to change the rules in advance of the 2026 midterms, I heard the other side of the aisle say that they believe people like other governors or former presidents are to blame. And to all of this, I say, why are we engaging in the petty squabbles of the day? How foolish it is to listen to the advice of man when we are faced with a moral dilemma that rises above party politics. In times of confusion, where we should turn is Holy Scripture. And in that sacred text, it offers the following advice in Romans 12:17. I'm sure you know it by heart. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Let me repeat that. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Upwards of 72% of Hoosiers are opposed to your redistricting efforts. We as elected officials are to listen to the will of the people. We've heard that time and time again, not the desire of one particular party. And you and I have been elected to represent the people. But I would venture to say, by the remarks of the bill author, which were stated ad nauseum, that you no longer desire to represent all of your constituents. You desire to legislate on the basis of political performance, political advantage. You desire a specific political outcome. You seek political theater. Perhaps you have made your political party your idol. Over and over again, the bill author repeated these and variations of these phrases in order to so clearly give the perception that, yes, your case falls squarely in the lines of the Supreme Court ruling of RICO versus Common Cause. It's allowable. It's your tool. It's your right. However, I'll share a piece of advice that my father has shared with me for as long as I can remember. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. The founding fathers created our great Constitution on the basis of permanence of differences in a free society. A permanence of difference. 9-0 maps are hardly a display of the constitutional spirit of the permanence of differences. When you consolidate power, you threaten liberty. Alexander Hamilton was concerned that an unprincipled man would mount the horse of popularity, incite citizens to betray the American experiment, and throw things into confusion. And here we are, staring at the doorstep of what our very forefather warned against. I urge you and your conscience and your spirit to think about the gravity of today's vote, the seriousness of what you are saying and allowing by voting yes. Serious. I urge you, for whatever conscience you might have left, to please vote no.
For discussion on the bill, Representative Bartlett, speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I really don't want to be up here. This situation, and don't much scare me, but this gives me a fear for our democracy. I lost my oldest brother Monday. He was in the Marine Corps. He fought for this country. in Vietnam. The day we came back in session, he died. And for us to stand up and be talking about our democracy, something he fought for. This came up before in 1994, and the attorneys general at that time said that we should do this. The opinion of the attorney general was we should do this after the census, every 10 years. I have friends on this side of the aisle, people I have the utmost respect for. I've worked all of my legislation, I've worked on this side of the aisle. Some of you may question it, but the current attorneys general and I work together and have done things together outside of here. I don't care about your political party. I care about you as a person. I've had some disagreements on this side of the aisle. I agree with you or I don't. If we set this precedence, whoever the majority party is can redistrict. We no longer have rules and regulations that we all abide by. We just make the difference because I'm in power and I can do it. It was just said, just because you can don't mean that you should. Make sure when you vote, the people that you're here to represent will be able to respect you when you get back home. I'm voting no, and I'm urging you to do the same.
Thank you, Representative Bartlett. My deepest sympathies on the passing of your brother. Representative Clinker would speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is a sad moment for many of us. As one of the longest serving members of the House, it bothers me when we see headlines in our newspaper that Senator Althing is being swatted twice with two pipe bombs, as well as being called from Washington, D.C. to tell him if he didn't vote for redistricting, that the state of Indiana's appropriations for SWAP would be cut. I mean, these are serious threats that affect not just our party, but your party and our members. As a former chaperone of Ron Althing's in high school when he was singing, that affects all of us. We're saddened by this. This move to redistrict has affected many people in our communities, not just Democrats, but many Republicans who are receiving phone calls, threats, lots of negative situations. I'm asking, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have this happen to our good friends and colleagues that we've worked with for years? I'm very saddened as a long-term member of this House to see these type of situations occur. So I think as a group, we need to rethink this. And as we go through this process and it goes over to the Senate and comes back, we need to make some judgments that are different than what we're doing today, So I'm pleading with you to rethink this and think about this. When a senator has said in a long-term article he was voting for redistricting, even though he was not for it at the beginning, he is now. A big article, and yet he's front page news today on being swatted with pipe bombs. Fortunately, Senator Alting moved up to Warren County, up to Carroll County, because his district changed, so he lives up near Lake Freeman. So this was affecting not just Senator Alting, but the new Lutheran pastor of St. James Lutheran Church, who bought his home. So what I'm saying is that it's not just affecting us, it's affecting other members in our community that have not had this happen before. They've been pleased with what some of us have been doing and want to do in the future. So I ask you and plead with you to think carefully. I know this bill will pass today, but as it goes through the process, I'm asking you to rethink what we're doing long-term so that we will be able to get together and do things positively for the state of Indiana that we love. Please think about that. Thank you.
First question on the bill, Representative Pack, speak on the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon, I've been listening to speech after speech after speech, and I guess the main message is let's not this time take away the power of the people. We've got 7 out of 9 Republican districts already in place. The hunger for that kind of power really does kind of scare me when you have that, but you still must have more. And why? I'll tell you. Let me first say that who's your legislators at this time are failing constituents. We've taken advantage of the 2016 national and state elections, riding on the coattails of Donald Trump. Many have seen the error of their ways, but many have not. Some have remained in the power-hungry bubble while neglecting those that continue to struggle to house and feed themselves. With all our newly manipulated congressional districts, there will be at least 2 districts totally left out when it comes to representation. And one of those happens to be mine, Congressional District number 7, Congressman Andre Carson. We lose congressional seats to those who do not care if we continue with things like Social Security. You know why? They don't need it. Our federal employees have just lost millions recovering from their 40-day shutdown, the longest in history. You know why? Because they don't need it. Because in Indiana, we have 9 congressional districts that have been unfairly constructed by folks who won't finally say, we're wrong. We're going about this the wrong way. We're not listening to our own hearts. We're listening to a tyrant who does not even have your interests at heart. Do you understand that? Not even yours. And why you toddle in behind him with every idea that he comes up with, I'll never know. But it's time to stand up for the people, you all. Whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat, let's show them our heart. Let's show them our stamina. Let's show them that we are individuals first that represent thousands of people. And that's what's important, not Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Excuse me, further discussion, Representative Porter, speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Leader, ladies and gentlemen of the House. It's one of the coldest days in December here in this capital city. Piece of legislation that you're proposed to put forth is truly cold to certain people in the state of Indiana. What you're trying to do today is undo all the sacrifices of people before us. The trailblazers, the change agents, the one who dug wells for us to drink out of, the one who planted trees for us to have the shade. Now you're filling up the wells with dirt, and you're cutting down the trees for the shade. This is what this bill is doing to our community, all our community, when it comes down to it. Don't think you've been inoculated to this. You're going to feel the effects of this also. We let a day today for a bunch of carpetbaggers from Washington, D.C. come and tell us what we need to do, because we're not smart enough as Hoosiers to do the maps. But yet and still, ladies and gentlemen, back in 2021, the maps were good. And I quote, no names, but I quote, "This is about policy, not politics. These maps are good maps. They're fair maps. Let's leave this in to the Hoosier voters. If they send you back, you're on the right side, and it's not politics." Dare he say, beautiful people don't want districts that look like salamanders. We don't want our districts to look like salamanders. Help me to understand. From this side of the aisle, this is what was quoted about the maps of 2021. Marion County, majority, minority community, going to be split 4 ways. 4 ways. If that is not an ism, I don't know what is. You can call it classism, sexism, racism, whatever. It is an ism. And we let somebody with an umbilical cord from Washington, D.C. come over here and tell us what to do. Are we dumb? We've all been elected. I think we're pretty darn smart individuals. But we're going to let that happen. Why? Why? Now, I know I'm not the greatest looking guy in the world, but I'm going to look in the mirror at myself and say, hey, I know I did what I was supposed to do. I'm looking at myself real nice. That's it. But here we are again, letting somebody else tell us what to do. And my friends in this room, we're pretty darn smart. We have degrees, we work hard, we know the issues, we give great arguments. We really do. But yet and still, we're going to have somebody come in and tell us that we're not smart enough, intelligent enough, have enough wisdom to keep the maps that we have and then work on them in the future at an appropriate time. What we're doing today with this proposed legislation is taking away the rights of Black and brown people away in Indiana. It guts the Bill of Rights. It guts the Voting Rights Act. It's undoing civil rights of Americans. It dilutes the voting powers of minorities. It takes away people's choice. This is what this piece of legislation is doing. It cracks Marion County. It obliterates it to a certain degree, because we are a community of interest which does not play in the fold of this piece of legislation. All for short-term political gain for somebody else other than us. You don't take care of home. We need to take care of our own homes. 1960, there were 4 African-American congresspeople. In 2025, there's 62 African-American congresspeople in Washington, D.C. After this happens, it's going to be a lot less. But we help build this America. We help pay taxes. We work hard, but we can't have real representation. I'll be voting no. Of course you know that. I'll be voting no because this is creating a pathway of exclusion, assault on minorities. And I never thought that we spending a lot of time. I mean, I sit on budget, we do budget, y'all know, and we're running about the same amount dealing with the $45 billion budget. And we're spending about as much time on that now in women's health. That's how important it is to us on this side of the aisle. And I'm glad that we all stayed here and talked about it and looked at it. But these are the issues that are affecting us. This bill is going to do the same type of thing as for some of you who don't live in Indianapolis, when the highway interstate system came through and cut up our communities and displaced African Americans in our community. This is what this is, displacing our votes to dilute our vote, which has diluted our neighborhoods. This is a pattern, turning things back well into the 21st century. Never thought it would be happening. Unfortunately, it's happening. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Leader, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hearing me today. I hope that you take my words and listen to them, and I'm glad you did. But I hope that as we depart today, that we can work and make this state, this city, and your neighborhoods a better place, because every piece on there is a neighborhood, not just a county, but a county with a neighborhood, with houses next to each other that the people gotta live with. And unfortunately, I love down in Orange County, like to go down there, but the area that they have that represent me, my congressperson go all the way down to Orange County. That's a 2.5-hour drive for me. 2.5 hours. I don't think I have that much interest with them. A little bit of gaming, that's about it, since it's down there, but I don't have that much interest. So ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and I did say brothers and sisters, I really mean it. I'll be voting no, and I ask that you do the same.
Further discussion, Representative Delaney, speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I knew this was going to be a bad month when I got when I didn't get invited to this session. There was a press release saying that the Republicans, that's the word, the Speaker's press release, will convene. It didn't even say, oh, by the way, we wouldn't mind if the Democrats came, you know, or we'd like to see you again. That invitation set us up to violate a statute that said we couldn't meet that way. We have to meet at the same time as the Senate, and violated a House rule that said we needed the consent of my friend, brother Giaquinta, which was not asked for, let alone given. So this thing was off to a very, very bad start. And it turned out the way I thought. No joy. There's no joy here. There's no debate here on one of the most important bills in years. No debate. No witnesses with knowledge. We don't know what whoever these people at this Republican Trust were thinking. They could have been a bunch of Ku Klux Klanners for all we know, sitting around saying, let's get rid of those black people. We don't know that. The Republican Party on this issue is guilty of what we old-time Catholics call vincible ignorance, meaning you've chosen not to know. And when it goes to court, we may find out who was doing it and what they were thinking. Oh, and by the way, it may have been noticed that this This county called Marion here is a large county. By itself, it may have been noticed it could sustain a congressional district and more. It might have been noticed that as long as I've been here 50-some years, we've had a congressman from this county. Now, are we going to have none or 4? I got my money on none. That's a community of interest. Forget the race issue for a moment. This county is a community of interest. We have our own kind of city that nobody else has. You're always griping about us. We're taking all the money. Well, we won't be taking any money anymore. Not from Washington, because that administration, in addition to cutting programs that benefit urban communities, will now not have anybody speaking for us in Congress who gives a damn about us. Ain't that great? Just to give you a little visual about how this works. The governor and I live near each other. I was in the man in church, in fact. We live real close to each other, a couple blocks away. He has a driver. I don't have a driver. I drive my own car. He has a driver. When the driver comes out of the governor's driveway now, he's in the 7th Congressional District. And he's in there for quite a while. North, south, east, or west. He's in the Congressional District. He's in the city of Indianapolis. Now, if his driver turns left, he can follow this Congressional District. Follow it around and end up in Jeffersonville, never leave the district. Or the governor can go right. Block or 2 away, he can turn right, follow the other district. The new 9th district. Ain't that great? Now, you know, I like Southern Indiana. I even can talk like that once in a while when I try to. And I find it very comfortable. People are very sociable. But I don't have a whole hell of a lot in common with them. I got to say that. Although there were some really nice Southern Democrats in the House before it all got screwed up here, but they really were some wonderful people. They all smoked, drank too much. They had a lot of sins, but they were good people. But that's over. That's over. So now I get to have all these people in my congressional district. I'm thinking, you know, I have a little interest in real estate. I'm thinking about building a multi-office building in my district. We can have 4 congressional offices. And you folks can come visit us in Indianapolis. Harrison County, I've been there. Where the hell is Lanesville? I've been there. So you can come up from Lanesville and visit our joint 4 congressman office in my district on the north side of Indianapolis. It'll be very useful for you. Very nice. You know, one of the things you learn as a lawyer is what's not said is very important. Not one suggestion that one member of the Republican caucus asked to move one county line to benefit their constituents. This thing was mailed in from Washington, and you were told to take it. Not one of you was dissatisfied. Not one of you cared. I have some friends out in Putnam County. They're going to be shocked to know that part of my legislative district now is in the congressional district of Putnam County. By the way, I do have seven farms in my district, so maybe we got something in common. But you couldn't make any changes, didn't suggest any changes, didn't vote on any changes, and if you had any fights, they weren't in public, and I doubt you had any fights because you were told what you were to do. So the political interest trumped any interest of any other group, of any city, any county, any local political group. All that matters is what some politician in Washington wants to be. This whole thing, there used to be a talk about, you know, groupthink. You guys have invented group non-think. Don't think about it. Try to forget that Indianapolis has a large black community. Try to forget that. Don't think about that because that might get you in trouble with the courts. Well, let me tell you what life is like, because guess what? I'm one of the people who lives in that minority-majority district. Guess what? I have survived. I would say I have thrived. Now, I've had to, once in a while, have a disagreement with Brother Porter or some of his friends in the African-American community. I'm sure sometimes they've been up to here with me. That's understandable. But we got some stuff done together. And we work together. I'm in that community. Okay? That is a community of interest to me. Within my party, in my district, the African Americans are the majority. I'm in that community. Step on me too. That's what you're doing. Step on me. Step on anybody who's willing to reach out to people who are of different background. Tell me there's no race issue here. I've been around a long damn time and I know better than that. It's there and you can't pretend you don't see it. So, what could we have discussed? We could have discussed whether these were good districts. We could have discussed whether we needed the districts. We could have discussed the following. This is a fundamental issue for you and me and this district and the budget of this state. Okay? The current federal government is cutting money for the states. They're cutting our universities. They're cutting our education funding. They're canceling contracts for health research. They're cutting money. And so now what you do to Indianapolis, you take away the congressman who cares about our city and replace him with people who don't care. So we're going to lose money at the city at a level beyond what we've already lost. Is the state of Indiana going to pony up? Is this legislature, not the Congress, going to pony up to cover the health care costs? Are we going to pony up to cover the educational losses? We're not going to do it, folks. We're on a track to impoverishing this county and this state. And you're not noticing it. Can't you see the consequences? Someone here today suggested that they cared about, from the Republican side, they cared about preschool. Where's the money going to come from? It's not coming from Washington, and there will be no congressman to lobby for it, for at least this area of the state. So, folks, your game of cutting taxes by little bits all the time to the point where we're choking is going to choke the people. That's what you're doing here today. This is a sad thing. You know, I would like to be really proud of this place. I can't tell you how proud I would be if you would simply stop this without sending it across the hall to the Senate so they can suffer. Just stop this. Just vote against this proposal. And guess what? This state would get a national recognition for standing up, being unique, being individual, and taking care of itself. We would become a famous state, a leading state, instead of just another sad imitator of Texas. We ain't Texas. We don't want to be Texas, I hope. We could be proud of ourselves, but that option apparently is not of interest. I'm going to tell you a story. I've been here so darn long. I was here in the year 1977 as a young lawyer, and I was the majority Democrat counsel in the Indiana Senate. And guess what? What's happening now where the President of the United States is calling in and telling people what to do? In a very different way, it happened then. And who was the president then? The president was Jimmy Carter. And there was something going on. He didn't want to help a political party. He wanted to recognize the role of women in our society. And we had something long forgotten about now called the Equal Rights Amendment, which needed, I think, 37 votes, 37 states. And 33 states, as I recall, had adopted it. And there seemed to be some momentum to say that women are equal in every way before the law and put it in the Constitution. So it came our turn, or we chose to bring up the issue because we Democrats wanted to do it. We had 26 votes. At that time, because we didn't have cell phones, there were a bank of telephones at the back of the Senate, 6 or 8 little booths. and you could run off the floor and call your wife or call your doctor or take a call from your political supporter or whatever. Jimmy Carter started having our senators line up in those little phone booths, and he would call them up. He didn't threaten them. He didn't promise them anything other than a chance to vote for the equality of women. That's all he promised. That's what a legitimate leader does. No threats, no bribes, no saying you won't get any money. Just could you do something for somebody else besides yourself? And we rose the occasion. We got the 26 votes. You had to vote 3 times. We got 26 votes. It was never the same. We got Republicans and Democrats jumping in and jumping out, but we got 26 votes 3 times and we passed it. We were the last state to pass that, and I'm so proud of that. I'd be very proud if we were the first state to defeat this nonsense. It's your chance. It's your opportunity. Please take advantage of it.
Further discussion, Representative Hamilton to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. This truly is a sad day. First, I just want to highlight the just absolute absurdity of the fact that we are here about to vote on maps that no one in this building had a hand in drawing. These maps were drawn, as we've learned this week, they were drawn entirely by East Coast partisan hacks, specifically for the purpose of cheating the system and saying to 45% of Hoosiers, they will have no voice in Congress. And you know what? Call me naive, but I thought Hoosier Republican elected officials ran this building. Apparently, it's Washington, D.C. Republican leaders who run this building now. This map rigging is the Republican Party's most urgent priority, but it is not, of course, it is not the priority of Hoosiers. It's not the priority of our constituents who have so many other priorities they would like us to work on. They're worried about their utility cost and the affordability of just about every essential need. And we just wasted 4 months, 4 precious months of our time on this issue. It's just plain wrong. And I just have to say, I am so tired of hearing Republicans say, this is a response to Democratic gerrymandering. They'll point to one state or another state. But friends, my colleagues across the aisle, I say to you, your party has been winning the gerrymandering game bigly for 15 years. After the 2020 census, when you look at all of the congressional seats, some were drawn by nonpartisan commissions, some by the courts. The ones that were drawn by political parties, 191 were drawn by Republicans and only 75 were drawn by Democrats. So don't tell me to look at Illinois. If someone says to you, let's look at all the states, you want to change the subject. It's so misrepresentative, disingenuous to point to one state. Yesterday, of course, we tried to put forward what would be the real saving grace of this week and this last 4 months, and that is a nonpartisan commission. We would have been a leader among states, but we didn't do that. If this map becomes law, I live on the north side of Indianapolis. From my home, 4 miles from my house, there will be 5 congressional districts. The 4 in Indianapolis and the 1 that borders our entire north side. That's stunning. But that speaks to how this map would attempt to deny the most economically vibrant and diverse city in our state representation in Congress. And when you overlay a map of Black household density, there is a disturbing reality. The lines surgically divide Black neighborhoods among the new districts that would be carved into the heart of Indianapolis. So the folks who drew the map that you've put forward out in DC or wherever they are on the East Coast, they might say this is only political, but it sure looks racial. And I guess it'll be up to the lawyers to make the final decision. It is chilling to look at that overlay. In Tuesday's committee, Leon Bates, an expert on Black history of Indianapolis, shared some sobering historical context. And a quote, first attributed to St. Augustine and more recently to Martin Luther King Jr., he said, "An unjust law is no law at all." That has stuck with me all week. This cynical gerrymandering is designed to steal congressional seats for the sole purpose of undermining the checks and balances our founders intended, an essential part of our democracy. This is a very dangerous precedent. It's a very, very low point in the work of us here in the House of Representatives. I urge you, I beg you to vote no.
For discussion, Leader Giaquinta to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House. At every conceivable turn this week, House Democrats have offered the supermajority opportunities to address real issues impacting Hoosiers every day. From reining in sky-high utility costs to tackling egregious healthcare premiums, there's no shortage of concerns that we could be fixing. Instead, House Republicans have rushed through cracked and packed maps that break up communities and dilute minority voices. All of our phones have been ringing off the hooks for months, ever since we first started discussing the possibility of redistricting, and the overwhelming majority of people we've spoken to don't want new maps. They want us to focus our energy on solving the problems that keep them up at night, not doing Washington, D.C.'s bidding. Our caucus offered 16 amendments yesterday, all of which were struck down. The simple fact of the matter is that we don't know how much mid-decade redistricting will cost local governments and counties. The author of the bill admitted in committee that he wasn't thinking about the impact on minority communities when he offered this map. There are too many unknowns to responsibly pass this map. By supporting House Bill 1032, House Republicans are making it clear that they answer to D.C., not the Hoosiers that we were elected to represent. I've been in the State House for a while now. I've seen a lot of lows, RFRA, right to work, a ban on women's health care, but this might be the lowest. This is a direct attack on the system, but more importantly, it's a blatant tell that you don't care what Hoosiers want. Hoosiers don't want to be told what to do. We want to work hard, care for our families, and have enough financial security for a rainy day. Today, too many of us are struggling to do that, and instead of working toward a better future, we're rushing through gerrymandered maps that no one in Indiana asked for. If this passes our chamber today, I'm hoping that the folks across the hall in the Senate will do the right thing and stand up to this DC power grab and vote no on redistricting. This has been a distraction for far too long. I and my caucus are ready to get to work to create a stronger economy and a better future for Hoosiers, not play political games that only serve to benefit Republican lawmakers. Vote no on House Bill 1032. Thank you.
Further discussion. Speaker Houston to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Speaker Kirchhoff. First of all, let me thank the author of the bill. Thank you for your work on this and your time and your effort and the studious process that you went to. Let me begin by saying I'm proud to say that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and on my side of the aisle are my friends. And this is a very difficult issue. And as somebody who has a responsibility here, I am so grateful and thankful for the way that you've handled it and the way you spoke about something I know that you're very passionate about and have concerns about. That all being said, we don't operate in a vacuum. We don't operate in a vacuum. And the fact of the matter is that states all across the country have or are continuing to do this. And I've heard that, well, we can stop it here. I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think what we do here will stop other states from doing it. I think that this is the place where we are right now. This is our time to act. Just as the voters in California said, overwhelmingly, they found it to be okay. It's a challenging issue. One, none of us took lightly. Not one of us didn't have long, thoughtful, meaningful conversations about it. But I appreciate what the work of the author. I appreciate what we've done. I'd ask for your support of House Bill 1032.
Is there further discussion? The chair sees none. The author has the right to close. Representative Smoltz to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I stand in support of House Bill 1032, authorizing mid-cycle congressional redistricting in the state of Indiana. When we first learned of a nationwide effort undertaken by both blue and red states to revisit congressional maps for political advantage, I found myself weighing two very competing questions. Should we retain the maps drawn in 2021, or should we review and redraw new maps for 2026? And honestly, at first, I could have argued either side. Maintaining the status quo would have been the easy way. But I chose to dig in, try to understand the facts, determine whether the Constitution justified action or compelled inaction. Frankly, I expected to find reasons not to act. But that's not what the law revealed. And in plain terms, despite hearing the contrary over and over, House Bill 1032 follows our rules, our laws, the intent of the framers of the Constitution, and the precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States, including last night's decision allowing the new maps in Texas. Redistricting is not merely a procedural exercise every 10 years. It's an ongoing constitutional responsibility. While the census anchors the process, nothing in the law prevents a legislature from revisiting maps when circumstances demand it. The Supreme Court could not be clearer. States may redraw districts whenever they deem appropriate, provided constitutional and statutory requirements are met. Some have contended the process is political, but representation itself is inherently political. The framers placed this duty on state legislatures, fully aware that it involves debate, judgment, and disagreement. Our task is not to strip politics from a political process. It is to carry out that process lawfully, transparently, and responsibly. This process has been open. Draft maps have been publicly released. Feedback has been and continues to be received and considered. No redistricting process is going to satisfy everybody, but transparency strengthens legitimacy and trust. Leadership requires addressing challenges when they arise, not when the calendar makes it comfortable. We do not choose the timing. The circumstances choose it for us. Responsible leadership requires action. And for these reasons, I respectfully ask you to support House Bill 1032.
Question is on final passage of the bill. All those in favor will, when the machine is open, vote aye. Those opposed vote no. Show the chair is voting aye. Have all the members voted? Tally the roll. Roll call shows 57 ayes, 41 noes. The bill has passed. I tally the bill, remain tally the act. Clerk shall inform the Senate of the passage of the bill. Senate sponsors? Senator Gaskell. That concludes the business of the day. Representative Jordan, do you have a motion? Heard the motion in a second. All those favoring, case say aye. Those opposed, no. We are adjourned.